guys ready to roll? Thank you, yeah,
Yes.
I appreciate that. So, all right, so I have obviously a handful of topics, but I was curious if anybody wants to start out with any questions. What's on everybody's mind?
Depends on what you tell us.
I mean, we can go with whatever direction you want, so a lot to talk about. Nothing that anybody has on their mind that they'd like to get out there first? I just want to make sure that we have time for all that. Okay.
Do you know when you'll know for sure about the alternatives on the
Yeah.
building plans?
We will have more clarity. That's actually a fantastic segue, Melinda, thank you very much. So, let me just talk about the building in general then. That's one of the key topics. So there's been a lot of movement from the actual work being done outside, and that's all on track. I'm not gonna get into the details there. But then behind the scenes with what's progressed really over the last month to make sure that we stay on track. So a few key dates took place. We were able to go get our bids back. Our bids came back good. They came back in line so that when assessing the budget, we do have some, I think, leeway to play around with those alternates. I do think that it's safe to say, I think I would anticipate you have one in particular that you're interested in, and there's a pretty good chance that that's going to be there. I mean, so it's the gift garden, and moving the gift garden upstairs. Just so everybody knows, the auxiliary really did come in with a very large gift, and so from our perspective, that was something that we wanted to honor their gift. We wanted to honor the auxiliary's gift by making that top priority. It was on the chopping block if it came down to it, but we should be in a position that'll be added. But in general, the bids came back. Now there's a funny process that goes into bid gathering for a project where government money is involved and us being a government facility. So they present, we have to present them to the state has to say, okay, then we have to present them to the city has to accept them, and then our board of directors has to accept them. Okay, so cumbersome, but we're on track, and really there shouldn't be any issues. We don't anticipate any. Once we get verification on that, we can be a little bit more open as to what will be included, what's not, and where those bids came in. Okay, so any questions on that part was specific to the bids. Okay, so the second part to it is the money, right? So we have been working with UM Bank. UM Bank is actually the bank that we used to help finance the Centennial Pavilion when that remodel and when that new build was done. And so we need to find money to help pay for the project from now until completion, okay? So the reason that we're borrowing is because we don't have the cash to build something of this size today. But what USDA does is USDA doesn't give you the money until you're at this point that they call significant completion. So the project has to be done or near done before they'll backfill. So we have to, we get what's called a construction loan, and those are the monies that will get us from today till the end of the project, so that we can pay the people that are coming in and doing the cement and the people that are doing the plumbing in real time. They don't want to have to wait until 3 years to get paid. Makes sense? So that has been going well. That too is a process that will hopefully be wrapped up at the board meetings in a couple weeks. So we have to go to the city council once again on the 16th, and then on the 19th we'll be able to hopefully get the final resolution from our board to go ahead and release those notes, and that will actually be done on Christmas Eve. So pending any unforeseen issues, by Christmas Eve we should have our financing in place to get us from now until the project completion. At that point we'll deal with really the USDA and just making sure that we have all our ducks in order before we go for those dollars. Okay? So questions about those two kind of big ticket items. Okay. From a building perspective, those are the two major issues that we've been dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Okay. The other things that are really out there though are making sure that our timeline, remains accurate, that we have a good plan in place for starting the build and for moving through the timeline effectively. We do have the option to get extensions at the end of the project from the USDA. We'd like to avoid that. Staying on track is the best way to make sure that all of our funding is secured. Okay, but a key piece of that funding is the auxiliary, the foundation, and the donations that Emily has been going out and trying to procure. So we do have pledges that we're hoping are going to crack the $1 million mark by the end of the year. We're very close and would feel that that's a very attainable goal, in hopes of getting $2 million by the end of the entire campaign. Why the $2 million is important, just as a refresher, we have to come up with about $9 million of our own monies that will not be lent to us by the USDA. And so the more people want to just give us money to go build, the better it is for the organization. USDA does that to make sure that we're not borrowing 100% of the project. They want to make sure that we have some skin in the game. But really the byproduct of going out on foundation visits is going and listening to the public and hearing what they have to say about the hospital and the project, and keeping them nice and informed. And honestly, without exception, we have had very positive feedback from everybody that we've gone to talk to about the hospital. Very supportive, very happy that we have the services. There is some education that we tend to do. People still think that we get tax dollars from time to time, or individuals will not necessarily know some of the nuances that go on with running the hospital, and it's a good opportunity to talk to them. But again, most importantly, a lot of support from the community on what we're trying to do. So I know Emily's come to departments to talk. And I do believe that will be something that she'll be going around and making, asks of employees. And I think the thing that we want to, this is not the area where we think we're going to necessarily, push us over the $2 million mark. But what I want to express to, employees, this is just a part, we want 100% participation. That's our goal. The dollar amount is less important, okay? We want everybody here to feel part of the project. Okay? So, really that's the update on the building. Come the first of the year, we will have an understanding of a lot more, and we'll be looking at the future plans and that groundbreaking and some of the fun stuff. Okay? So any questions? Okay. So the next item that I wanted to talk to you all about is the strategic plan. So over the course of the past few months, we have been working with a group from UNI to facilitate our strategic plan. It's been the Directors Council, Kurt, it's been the board, and it's been Dr. Dahlquist who have gotten together on that committee to help really drive the plan that's gonna help guide the organization over the course of the next 3 years. The next 3 years coincidentally coincides with the building project, and so we wanted to again just make sure that we had an updated roadmap as we're taking on something this big. We are taking that to the board as well on the 19th, and so we will take the final product to them, get that ratified, and then we will begin the communication process to everybody else so that you can see what we feel are the necessary goals and objectives moving forward. Without getting into too many specifics, I want to say that it's very balanced in that we look at quality care. Obviously, that's the first thing that we need to be paying attention to. We then look at employer engagement and retention. Yes, we want to be able to take care of patients, but we also need to be sure that we're taking care of everybody that's working here and doing it in a way that is sustainable. And then the financial responsibility component, which comes in after that. So we'll look at those three kind of at the top, and then underneath that, we have a section on technology. Obviously, our IT has been going through some upgrades right now. We do have some more upgrades coming up in 2020, along with some, what I would say are very exciting ways to engage patients and ways to leverage the system to make the three above that much stronger, okay? And then we also have a full section on the facility. Again, going through a building project of this size, we need to make sure that those items stay as a focal point moving forward. Okay? What do you guys want to know about that?
I think a good reminder on that too, Jim, is that the plan actually started with all of the feedback from
Yeah.
the employees,
Sure.
the focus groups, the survey that was done. And so they actually took all that information and kind of put a structure together for the plan for us to then just kind of
Yeah, thank you.
evolve. So I just wanted to remind people about that we didn't just sit there and kind of make
Sure.
things up ourselves. So.
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Do you know when to start moving people to the Coonrod building?
I think the correct answer is I should know when that is. I don't think it's for a couple of months yet, if I'm not mistaken. Is this one right?
Yeah, the last thing I heard from Jeff was he was moving his stuff first, and then they were going to start working on space.
I don't think we need to move
So-
until closer to April. Maybe don't quote me on that, but it's still a few months out.
I think the last thing he told me was that he needed to move stuff there because of the project starting in the facility, that we aren't gonna have room like in the loading
Yeah,
dock
right.
and that stuff, so we need to make room for that stuff to come in January.
Yeah, that's right.
And then the people, because people are kind of content where they are right now,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not forced out yet.
Okay. So another big facility update, so I can keep going through the list, is we did approve a pretty significant update to the surgery center. So we did have lights and some other pieces of equipment that were end of life and were really starting to fail. Some of which was becoming unsafe, and so that whole renovation will be taking place early 2020, so we will be updating all 4 rooms to have similar pieces of equipment, lights, monitors and screens, so that a provider can go into any one of the rooms and feel like he or she knows where everything's at, and that it's not going to fail on them. But the key part to that is that we will be outfitting OR4. Outfitting OR4 does increase capacity down in the surgery department significantly. We do feel like we have some individuals that want to come here and practice. We do need space is one of the things that we need before we're able to truly accommodate any other providers to come and practice here. Okay. You guys want me to keep talking? Okay. Paying attention to financials. Financials have been good over the course of the past few months, the first parts of the year here. November, we'll see. We're going to hit the revenue number, but our expense number is going to, looks like it might be a little high, and our contractuals are going to be a little bit high, which means what the insurance companies decide that they want to keep for themselves. And I can be much more negative about that if you'd like, maybe over a beer sometime. But the finances are holding steady, which is a good thing this early in the year. Okay, we had a good summer. The summer tends to be a trough, right? People aren't as sick. People aren't as close to their deductibles, quite frankly, and maybe aren't as inclined to come to the hospital. Yes, we've been busy on the floor, but we've seen, some of these other ancillary services that we brought in really see an uptick in volume, so that's a good thing. I say all that with the caveat that this is also a very important time financially. So with all the borrowing that I had mentioned before, making sure that we don't get, sloppy with the monies that we're spending over the course of the next 3 years is extremely important. What the USDA And what the bondholders require are some, they require some, I'll say, accounting ratios to be at certain numbers, okay? We are okay with them right now. We need to grow to make sure that we don't fall below the numbers that they're giving us. And so now is kind of the time to make sure that we are positioning ourselves to not run into any issues when the USDA comes back and says, how many days cash on hand do you have, or how long can you service your debt? Okay, so that's what we're trying to figure out, what those numbers are and what those targets exactly should be year in, year out, so that we can work to those numbers. But we're stressing that to managers, and we're going to stress that to staff as well, to just be sure that you're thinking about any expense, any added or new expenses that we might want to be bringing on. We also don't want you thinking about expense reduction if it's going to get in the way of necessary growth, patient safety, okay? Those are not going to be areas where we're going to put an employee at risk or a patient at risk, or we're going to turn away from growth if it means increasing expenses, okay? Okay. What else?
Are we looking at hiring our own new surgeon? And I've had people ask about female surgeons in particular.
So I'm going to think about how I want to answer this. So we are looking at a way to bolster our surgery options, and we are leaning very heavily towards a female surgeon, okay? I think that this is very much an area where gender balance is needed, okay? We want to give patients as many options as possible, and it's absolutely appropriate that an individual may select a female surgeon. We don't have that right now. And so that is what we're working towards. I will cross your fingers, we'll have something to share here very soon, okay? So, yeah, typically we haven't had issues with gender balance with our providers. It's been extremely balanced, and you know, unfortunately, when you're in a smaller facility and you're looking at, you know, out of 3 or out of 2, it's hard for that, you know, it doesn't take much for that balance it doesn't take much for it to fall out of balance. But we've heard that, and it wasn't, we knew that would be the case with Dr. Crawford leaving, and so we do want to make sure that we, like I said, give our patients the option.
Is there been any more wiggle room with the pediatrician that we've been looking for a long time?
So pediatrics, again, was an area that, so no, we haven't had any bites on pediatrician right now. I will tell you that looking at peds and peds coverage is something that Dr. Dahlquist and I have been working with some of our providers to really develop a good strategy. It was an area where we kind of just cast the net, and I don't know that we really had, we as an administration had a good strategy for how to deploy those people. And so we are, since we haven't really been able to find somebody, we are going to slow things down a little bit, and we are going to develop a little bit different strategy and a different approach that, like I said, Dr. Dahlquist and I are going to take the lead on, and we're going to work with the PEDS providers to figure out what our true endpoint should be. Yep, no pediatricians out there right now. We typically haven't had a hard time recruiting up here, but that was one where we had a hard time just really getting any nibbles. So I think the good news is that we did have Stacy Huck, who finished her PEDS NP program, and there's a lot to that program that can really help. Dr. Wagner especially. But then Teresa Isaacson as well is in that program, but she's been doing a lot of PEDS support work down at Covenant. So she's been doing like newborn visits and things like that. And these are all the areas that, you know, the goal is to relieve the pressure on the one provider, right? And so Dr. Wagner, everything did kind of fall on her when they said we need a pediatrician. We have two great providers that I think offer a lot of different options and kind of relieve some of the pressure on her moving forward. But it's new for us, and so trying to figure out what that strategy should be and what that ideal mix should be is just something that we want them to drive and tell us, and then we can hopefully help facilitate setting that up. I don't know if that means that we'll still need a pediatrician or not. What else? That's all I really got.
Any news on hair care?
It wasn't what it seemed. Who asked that? I'm sorry.
I did.
Hi. It wasn't exactly what it seemed, and it looks like there's going to be more costs than we originally anticipated, and that there is the potential that it's going to not be as helpful for our emergency room as we originally anticipated. That doesn't mean that we've stopped talking with them, but we did have to go back to the drawing board and say, you know what, as we've kind of looked at this contract and as we've looked at what this might mean for our facility, we don't know that we see the benefits to the same degree, okay? So originally it looked like it was going to be a slam dunk, but at one point it looked like it was going to be about a $500,000 expense, and that $500,000 expense was going to come with very little support to our emergency room or in zero revenue generation, right? If they need a helicopter, they're not staying here. You have a helicopter so that we can get them to Iowa or Mayo typically. And so when you look at it, and what I had just said about expenses, like, well, that'd be a nice to have, but if we're really looking at making sure that we're scrutinizing our extra expenses, this is not the area that we want to do that now. We do feel that there's still a potential path forward, but the ball is in their court and they're looking at a couple of different things. And so I don't have a good update other than we're continuing to talk to them. Sure like to be here. So, yeah, what other updates can we give you? Do you guys want to talk about the shortage in French fries that's already hit Japan and that's coming to the United States?
Might be a good thing.
Yeah, no
I might.
kidding. Yeah.
I could eat a few less French fries.
Okay. So enjoy your French fries. That's my message that I want to leave to all of you. Or get used to eating like yuca or sweet potato fries. That was the recommendation in the article that I read.
Don't you just move to Idaho?
So Idaho's the problem.
Oh.
Idaho's part of the problem. Yeah. So hate to break it to you.
I won't be
Start
moving.
growing your
No,
own.
no,
Staying
no.
here.
Start. Sweet potatoes are a little bit well. We have a dietitian. Sweet potatoes and yuca and taro have potential to be a little bit healthier than more nutritional benefits. Is that correct?
Yeah, but then you fry them and.
Yeah, that's true. So, okay, that's all I have. Unless there's any other questions, I'll stick around for a little bit. Okay, thanks guys.